The Korean Mafia boss's baby wouldn't stop crying in the restaurant until a black waitress did the unthinkable. The infant's wails echoed through the exclusive dining room like a siren that refused to be silenced, cutting through hushed conversations and the delicate clink of wine glasses. Every patron in the upscale Korean fusion restaurant shifted uncomfortably in their seats, some exchanging awkward glances, others pretending not to notice the disturbance. But none dared to complain, not when they recognized the man holding the child. Yang Tara sat motionless at the corner table reserved for VIPs, his jaw locked tight enough to shatter stone. The impeccably tailored charcoal suit that usually made him look like a weapon forged in expensive fabric now seemed to suffocate him like a straitjacket. His normally calculating dark eyes, the kind that could strip a man's courage with a single glance, held a flicker of something his world never permitted. Vulnerability. Raw, desperate vulnerability. The baby, his son Eric, continued to scream, tiny fists beating against Tara's broad chest with the fury only a hungry infant possessed. 3 months old and already caught in the crossfire of a legacy he didn't choose. 8 weeks since Jiwoo had bled out on the delivery table, her last words a whispered plea to protect their son. 8 weeks since young Tara, the silent dragon who controlled the West Coast Korean underworld, had become something he never imagined possible. Powerless. Yongwang. One of his bodyguards leaned in discreetly, his voice barely above a murmur. Respectful but urgent. The Korean title Dragon King carried weight even in whispers. We could leave. Take him back to the estate. No. Tara's voice came out low and controlled, wrapped in silk over steel. We stay. But Eric didn't care about his father's authority. He didn't care that men bowed when Tara entered a room, that rival syndicates crossed state lines to avoid his territory, that entire businesses had been erased from existence at his command. The infant only knew hunger, discomfort, and the absence of the warmth he'd known for 8 precious weeks before death stole it away. Tara had tried everything. Bottles prepared by the nanny who waited anxiously at his Malibu compound. Formula from 3 different brands that Eric spat out with surprising force. Rocking motions that felt foreign and clumsy in arms more accustomed to violence than tenderness. Nothing worked. His son was slowly starving, and the most dangerous man in Los Angeles couldn't do a damn thing about it. Across the dining room, weaving between tables with practiced efficiency, Bianca Griffin felt her body betray her the moment she heard those cries. Her breasts ached with sudden, painful letdown, milk threatening to soak through the nursing pads she still wore beneath her crisp waitress uniform. She closed her eyes for just a heartbeat, fighting down the wave of grief that always crashed over her with that familiar sensation. 4 months. It had been 4 months since she'd held her own son. 4 months since Elijah's tiny lungs had simply given up their fight. Too weak, too premature, too fragile for this world. No miracle intervention, no last-minute save. Respiratory failure, the doctors had called it, as if clinical language could somehow soften the savage ache of losing your child. Bianca had been working double shifts at Hanok, this upscale LA restaurant that catered to the city's elite, trying to bury herself in work, trying to outrun the emptiness that had taken up residence in her chest. She was a server now, though she'd trained as a pediatric nurse before Elijah's death. After losing her son, she couldn't bear to step foot in another NICU. Couldn't watch other mothers hold their thriving babies, while hers lay silent in the ground. The crying intensified, and Bianca felt tears prick the corners of her eyes. She knew that sound. She'd heard it 1,000 times in her nursing days, the desperate, hungry wail of an infant who needed something primal, something only a mother could provide. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the tray of empty dishes she'd just cleared. You okay, girl? Her coworker Jasmine whispered as she passed, concern creasing her face. Bianca nodded automatically, not trusting her voice. But her gaze had already found the source of the crying. The corner table. The man in the immaculate suit who sat like a king on a throne. Even in crisis, the baby who looked so small against that broad, powerful chest. And she knew with the bone-deep certainty of a mother who'd lost everything that baby was starving. The restaurant manager, Mr. Kim, materialized beside her table station, his face tight with stress. Don't stare, he hissed under his breath in English, though his eyes kept darting toward the corner table. That's Yang Tara. You understand? Nobody bothers him. Nobody even looks at him unless he calls for service. His baby, Bianca started, is none of our business. Mr. Kim's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. The silent dragon doesn't want help. He wants privacy. You give him exactly what he asks for. Nothing more. Your job depends on it. Your safety might too. The silent dragon. Bianca had heard whispers about him everyone in LA's service industry had. Yang Tara, head of the most powerful Korean crime syndicate on the West Coast. A man who could make people disappear with a phone call. Someone you didn't cross, didn't question, didn't even think too hard about if you valued your life. But that baby's cries cut through every warning, every logical thought, every instinct for self-preservation. Because Bianca Griffin knew what it sounded like when an infant was crying not from discomfort or tiredness, but from genuine need. From hunger that gnawed at tiny bellies and made small bodies desperate. And her own body, still producing milk for a son who would never drink it again, was responding with an urgency that made her chest ache. She watched as Yang Tara tried once more to offer a bottle, watched the baby turn his face away with another piercing shriek. Watched this powerful, dangerous man's face crack just slightly, just enough to reveal the terrified father beneath the monster. And Bianca made a decision that would change everything. She set down her tray, smoothed her uniform with shaking hands, and began walking toward the corner table, toward the most dangerous man in Los Angeles, toward a crying baby who needed exactly what she still had to give. Mr. Kim's frantic whisper followed her. "Bianca, don't." But she was already moving. Her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, her hands trembling, her body remembering what it meant to be needed by an infant. Every eye in the restaurant tracked her movement. Yang Tara's bodyguards shifted, hands moving subtly toward concealed weapons. The dragon himself looked up, his dark eyes fixing on her with the kind of intensity that could stop hearts. And Bianca Griffin, a black waitress from South Central who'd lost everything that mattered, kept walking. Because sometimes the unthinkable was the only thing that made sense. If stories about impossible courage move you about love that defies every rule, every warning, every border, then you found your channel. Hit subscribe, and welcome to the family. Because what happens next between a grieving waitress and the most dangerous man in Los Angeles is going to stay with you long after this video ends. The walk across that dining room felt like crossing a minefield. Every step Bianca took toward Yang Tara's table made the air thicker, heavier with unspoken danger. She felt eyes tracking her movement, the bodyguards positioned strategically around the room, the wealthy patrons who'd gone silent mid-conversation, Mr. Kim's panicked expression burning into her back. Eric's cries had reached a fever pitch, the kind that made even strangers wince with sympathetic pain. Bianca stopped 3 feet from the table, close enough to be heard over the infant's wails, far enough to show respect for whatever invisible boundaries surrounded this man. "Excuse me, sir." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'm a pediatric nurse. I can help." Tara's eyes snapped to hers with the impact of a physical blow. Up close, he was even more striking, sharp cheekbones, a mouth set in a grim line, and that neck tattoo she could now see clearly. Intricate Korean dragon scales disappearing beneath his collar, but it was his eyes that held her captive. Dark, bottomless, and currently swimming with a desperation that cracked through his controlled exterior. "You're a server." His English was perfect, accent barely detectable, voice like gravel wrapped in silk. "I was a nurse. NICU. Before," Bianca's throat tightened, "before I lost my son 4 months ago." Something shifted in Tara's expression. Recognition. The kind that only came from shared devastation. "My wife," he said quietly, and the 2 words carried the weight of a confession. 8 weeks after he was born, she bled out. The doctors couldn't. He stopped, jaw clenching. "He won't eat. Nothing works." Bianca looked at Eric, truly looked at him. The slight hollowness in his cheeks, the way his cries had that reedy quality of genuine distress. Her nurse's training cataloged everything. Dehydration, weight loss, a baby slowly starving despite having a father who could buy him the world. "Can I?" She gestured toward the child. Tara hesitated for only a heartbeat before standing, towering over her. He handed Eric over with the careful desperation of someone entrusting their most precious possession to a stranger. The moment Bianca cradled the baby against her chest, Eric's cries changed pitch, still desperate, but now with frantic rooting motions against her uniform. She knew exactly what he needed, what her body was still producing for a child who'd never drink it again. "Mr. Yang." She met his eyes directly. I think I know what's wrong, but I need to speak with you privately. One of the bodyguards moved to intervene, but Tara raised a hand, stopping him mid-step. Where? The manager's office. Back hallway. Mr. Kim looked like he might faint when they approached, but one glance from Tara sent him scurrying to unlock the door. The office was small, cramped, smelling of kimchi and paperwork. Tara closed the door behind them while his bodyguards formed a wall outside. What do you need? Tara asked. Bianca's heart hammered against her ribs. This was insane. She was about to cross every professional boundary, every social norm, every rule she'd ever learned. But Eric was rooting frantically against her chest, and her body ached with the need to provide what he was desperately seeking. Your son isn't rejecting food because he's sick, she said carefully. He's rejecting artificial nipples because he wants what his mother gave him. Breast milk. The comfort of nursing. Understanding dawned in Tara's eyes, followed immediately by shock. I'm still lactating, Bianca continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. My body hasn't stopped producing milk since Elijah died. I can help him, if you'll allow it. The silence that followed felt eternal. Tara stared at her like she'd just offered him the moon. His throat worked, Adam's apple bobbing as he processed her words. You would do that? His voice cracked. Just slightly. For a stranger's child? For a hungry baby who's suffering? Bianca looked down at Eric, whose whimpers had become almost pitiful. I couldn't save my son. Maybe I can save yours. Tara's hand came up to his face, covering his eyes for just a moment. When he lowered it, there was wetness on his lashes he didn't bother to hide. The storage room, he said roughly. It's private. I'll have my men guard the door. 20 minutes later, Bianca sat on a stack of rice bags in the restaurant's back storage room. Eric latched contentedly at her breast, his tiny hand curled against her skin. Tears streamed silently down her face as she rocked him, feeling the familiar pull and release, the weight of an infant in her arms, the purpose she thought she'd lost forever. Outside the door, Tara stood with his back against the wall, listening to the silence where his son's cries had been. His bodyguards exchanged glances of pure shock. Their untouchable Dragon King had just allowed a Black American waitress to do something so intimate, so sacred. It defied every tradition they knew. When Bianca emerged with Eric sleeping peacefully in her arms, Tara's expression was unreadable. He took his son carefully, looking down at the infant's relaxed face with wonder. Thank you, he said, and the words carried more weight than any she'd ever heard. He pulled a business card from his inner jacket pocket, heavy cardstock, minimalist design, probably cost more than her weekly paycheck. I need to see you again. For Eric. I'll pay whatever you ask. Bianca took the card with trembling fingers. No name, just a phone number embossed in silver ink. I don't want payment. I just want to help him. In my world, everything has a price. Tara's eyes locked onto hers with burning intensity. And what you just gave my son is priceless. Call me tomorrow. Please. She nodded, not trusting her voice. As she watched him leave bodyguards materializing around him and Eric, moving through the restaurant like a dark tide, Bianca realized she'd just stepped into something far bigger than a simple act of compassion. She'd just become bound to the most dangerous man in Los Angeles. And somehow, impossibly, the black Mercedes S-Class that pulled up to Bianca's apartment complex in South Central looked obscenely out of place among the aging Hondas and beat-up pickup trucks. Her neighbors stared through windows as a driver in a dark suit opened the rear door, his movements precise and vaguely military. Miss Griffin, he said with a slight bow, Mr. Yang is expecting you. The drive to Malibu took 45 minutes through LA traffic, each mile carrying her further from everything familiar. Bianca watched the city transform through tinted windows from her working-class neighborhood to the gleaming excess of the Pacific Coast Highway, where mansions clung to cliffsides like territorial declarations of wealth. The compound sat behind 12-foot stone walls topped with cameras that tracked their approach. The gate was solid steel, flanked by a guardhouse where two men in suits spoke rapid Korean into headsets. As they passed through, Bianca counted at least 6 more security personnel patrolling the grounds with weapons barely concealed beneath tailored jackets. Her stomach knotted with realization. This wasn't just wealth. This was a fortress. The main house was a modern masterpiece of glass and steel that seemed to float above the ocean. The driver led her inside, where the temperature-controlled air smelled faintly of jasmine and something else expensive, cologne, leather, power. Tara emerged from a side hallway carrying Eric, who was screaming with the same desperate intensity from 3 nights ago. But this time, Bianca could see how much worse it had gotten. Eric's face was blotchy and red, his tiny body trembling with exhaustion from crying. Tara looked equally devastated, his perfect suit rumpled, dark circles under his eyes, that controlled mask slipping to reveal raw panic. "He won't eat," Tara said without preamble. "The pediatrician wants to admit him. Insert a feeding tube." His voice cracked. "I can't let them do that to him." Bianca was already reaching for Eric before conscious thought caught up. The baby immediately began rooting against her chest, his cries taking on that frantic, hungry edge she recognized. "Where can I—" "The nursery." "Upstairs." Tara gestured, but another man stepped forward, blocking their path. He was older, maybe 50, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow and eyes that held open hostility. He spoke in rapid Korean, his tone sharp and questioning. Bianca didn't need translation to understand the challenge in his voice. Tara's response was even sharper, his posture shifting into something predatory. The other man's jaw clenched, but he stepped aside, though his glare at Bianca could have stripped paint. "My head of security, Minjun," Tara said tightly. "He has concerns about allowing a stranger access to my son." "And what are your concerns?" Bianca asked, meeting Tara's eyes directly despite Eric's increasingly desperate cries. "That I'm about to trust you with the only thing in this world that matters to me." He paused. "And that I don't even know your last name." "That I don't even know your last name." "Griffin. Bianca Griffin." She shifted Eric higher. "And I need to feed him. Now." The nursery was a study in contrasts, traditional Korean artwork alongside modern furniture. Everything in soothing blues and silvers. Bianca settled into the rocking chair while Tara stood by the door, giving her privacy but unable to leave completely. As Eric latched and his cries finally, blessedly stopped, Tara's shoulders sagged with relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. "In Korean culture," he said quietly, "there's a concept called utyuga, milk kinship. When a woman nurses a child who isn't biologically hers, she becomes bound to that family, sacred to them." He turned to face her. "What you're doing for Eric in my world, it means something. It makes you untouchable, protected, mine to defend." "I'm not yours," Bianca said automatically, though her heart rate had kicked up at the possessive pronoun. "No." His smile was slight, dangerous. "But in the eyes of my organization, you are now. The moment word gets out that the Yongwang's son has a milk mother, you become a target. For rivals who want leverage, for traditionalists who see this as disgrace." He paused. "You need to understand what you've stepped into." Bianca looked down at Eric, peacefully nursing, his tiny hand curled against her skin. Then she looked back up at this man who wielded power like a weapon but stood helpless before his infant son's needs. "I need a contract," she heard herself say. 2 weeks. $50,000. And a guarantee that I can walk away at the end with no retaliation. No following me, no claiming me as property. Something flickered in Tara's eyes, surprise, maybe respect. "Done. My lawyer will have papers drawn up within the hour, and I want it in writing that I'm here as a medical professional, not some," she struggled for words, "concubine or whatever your culture might assume." "You're not a concubine." Tara's voice went hard. "You're Eric's milk mother. That's infinitely more important. In the old families, that role is considered sacred, honorable." He moved closer. "But you're right to protect yourself. I'll make sure the contract is airtight." Minjun appeared in the doorway, speaking urgent Korean. Tara responded, then turned back to Bianca. "The guest house is ready. It's separate from the main residence. Private. You'll have your own space." He hesitated. "Thank you, Bianca. For coming. For helping him." As she was led to the guest house, a structure that was nicer than any apartment she'd ever lived in, with ocean views and furniture that probably cost more than her car, Bianca felt the weight of her decision settling over her shoulders. She'd just entered the dragon's world, and she had no idea if she'd ever truly be able to leave. By the 3rd day, Bianca had fallen into a rhythm that felt both surreal and oddly natural. Every 3 hours, day and night, she made the short walk from the guest house to the main residence, where Tara waited in the nursery with Eric. He was always there, sitting in the corner chair like a silent sentinel, watching his son nurse with an intensity that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow didn't. "You don't have to stay," she said during the 2 a.m. feeding. Her voice soft in the dimness. "I know what I'm doing. I know you do." Tara's eyes never left Eric's face. "But he's all I have left of her. I can't." He stopped, jaw working. "I can't leave him, even for a moment." Bianca understood that fear intimately. "Jiwoo," she said carefully. "Can you tell me about her?" The silence stretched so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "She was a prosecutor. Brilliant. Terrifying in court. A ghost of a smile. She knew what I was when we married. Didn't care. Said she'd prosecute everyone except me." His voice roughened. "The pregnancy was complicated. High blood pressure. The doctors warned us. But she wanted him so badly. And then, during delivery, something ruptured. They tried everything. But she bled out in minutes. And all I could do was watch. I'm sorry." Bianca whispered, tears burning her eyes. "Your son, Elijah." Tara's gaze finally met hers. "Tell me about him." So she did. Told him about discovering she was pregnant. About the joy that turned to terror when Elijah arrived 10 weeks early, weighing barely 3 pounds. About the 2 months in the NICU, the tubes and monitors and desperate hope. About coming in one morning to find doctors surrounding his incubator. About the words, respiratory failure, that still echoed in her nightmares. "He fought so hard," she finished, her voice breaking. "But his lungs just couldn't do it." Tara leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "We're both haunted by people we couldn't save. Maybe that's why this feels right," Bianca said, looking down at Eric sleeping peacefully in her arms. "Helping him. It doesn't fix what we lost. But it makes the loss mean something." Tara finished. Over the following days, something shifted between them. Tara taught her basic Korean phrases: "Annyeonghaseyo" for hello, "Gamsahamnida" for thank you, "Saranghae" for love. She taught him about Black American culture, about church traditions and soul food, and the specific way her grandmother used to hum while cooking. They cooked together one evening, Tara making kimchi jjigae while Bianca attempted cornbread. The fusion was chaotic and perfect, and Eric watched from his bouncer, gurgling happily, but the outside world was never far away. Minjun entered the nursery during a feeding on day 5, his expression grim. He spoke in Korean, and Bianca caught only fragments. But Tara's face hardened with each word. "What's wrong?" she asked when Minjun left. "Word has spread. Through the families." Tara stood, pacing like a caged animal. "About you. About what you're doing for Eric. Is that bad?" "It's complicated." He stopped at the window, staring out at the ocean. "Some of the younger generation see it as progressive, modern. But the traditionalists," he turned back to her, "they see a Black woman nursing a Korean heir as an insult. A degradation of bloodline purity." Bianca's stomach dropped. "Tara," the Chinese triad sent an inquiry. "Asking if you're under my protection, or if you're—" He paused, disgust flickering across his face. "Available for negotiation." "What does that mean?" "It means they're testing boundaries. Seeing if they can use you as leverage against me." His eyes blazed. "I sent word back that you're sacred to my family. That touching you means war." Before Bianca could respond, voices erupted downstairs, one of them loud, angry, speaking rapid Korean. Tara's expression went cold as winter. "Stay here," he commanded, already moving toward the door. But Bianca followed anyway, Eric still in her arms, reaching the top of the stairs in time to see an older Korean man in an expensive suit arguing with Minjun in the foyer. The family resemblance was unmistakable, same sharp cheekbones, same intensity, but twisted with contempt. The man's eyes found Bianca, raked over her with barely concealed disgust, then spat something in Korean that made Tara go absolutely still. "English," Tara said quietly, dangerously. "For our guest. Non. Guest." The older man's laugh was caustic. "You mean the black whore you've installed in our family home?" Bianca flinched, but Tara moved so fast she barely tracked it. One moment he was at the top of the stairs, The next he had his uncle, because this had to be Uncle Sungmin, slammed against the wall, forearm across his throat. Careful, Sumkon, Tara growled. You're speaking about Eric's milk mother. In our culture, that makes her sacred. Or did you forget the old ways you're so fond of invoking? Sungmin's face purpled, but his eyes held vicious certainty. The old ways demand Korean bloodlines remain pure. This woman, this outsider nursing our heir, is a stain on 5 generations of Yang family honor. My son's life matters more than your honor. Tara released him, stepping back with rigid control. Eric was dying. She saved him. That makes her untouchable. She makes you weak. Sungmin straightened his suit. The families are watching, Tara. Questioning your judgment, your fitness to lead. He glanced at Bianca with cold calculation. This ends badly. For everyone. Get out of my house. Sungmin moved toward the door, then paused. 2 weeks, you said? In her contract? His smile was sharp as a blade. A lot can happen in 2 weeks, nephew. A lot can change. The door closed behind him with ominous finality. Tara stood motionless, every muscle coiled with tension. When he finally turned to look at Bianca, his eyes held apology and something darker. Something that looked like fear. I'm sorry, he said hoarsely. I'm so sorry you heard that. But Bianca was looking down at Eric, thinking about Uncle Sungmin's eyes, about the way he'd looked at her like she was something to be eliminated, and wondering if 2 weeks would be enough time to escape the storm that was coming. Day 9 arrived with the scent of salt air and the sound of Eric's laughter, actual laughter, the kind that made Tara stop mid-stride and stare at his son like he'd just witnessed a miracle. Bianca had been playing peekaboo with the baby on a blanket in the garden, and Eric's giggles were the purest sound either of them had heard in months. He's never done that before, Tara said, his voice thick with emotion. He's getting stronger. Bianca smiled up at him. Gaining weight. Thriving. Because of you. The intensity in those 3 words made her breath catch. They'd been dancing around this thing between them for days, the lingering glances, the casual touches that lasted too long, the way conversation flowed easier than it should between 2 people from such different worlds. That evening, they cooked together again. Tara showed her how to properly ferment kimchi, while she taught him the secret to her grandmother's collard greens, the bacon fat, the vinegar, the low and slow simmer. They made fusion tacos that were gloriously wrong and somehow perfect. Laughing as Eric watched from his high chair, happily gumming a teething biscuit. My grandmother would have a heart attack if she saw this, Bianca said, assembling a taco with kimchi and greens. Mine too. Tara grinned, an actual genuine grin that transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. She was very traditional. Everything had to be done the Korean way. My Nana was the same. Said I'd lose my roots if I wasn't careful. Bianca's smile faded slightly. Wonder what she'd think about all this. What would you want her to think? The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither had voiced yet. After dinner, with Eric sleeping peacefully in his crib upstairs, Tara led Bianca down to the beach. The sun was setting, painting the Pacific in shades of gold and crimson. They walked in silence until Tara stopped at the water's edge, his expensive shoes getting soaked as waves lapped at his feet. I'm lonely, he said suddenly. I've been lonely since Jiwoo died. But these past 9 days, with you here. He turned to face her. I feel human again. Not just the young Wang, not just Eric's father, just Tara. Bianca's heart hammered against her ribs. I'm scared, she admitted, of what I'm feeling, of what this is becoming. What are you scared of, specifically? That this is just proximity, grief and convenience making us feel things that aren't real. She wrapped her arms around herself. That you might be fetishizing me, that I might be drawn to you because you represent safety and power. She met his eyes. That when people look at us, all they'll see is black woman and Asian man. And all the stereotypes that come with it. Tara moved closer, his hand coming up to cup her face with surprising gentleness. I see you, Bianca Griffin. Not your skin color. You, the woman who fought her way into my world to save my son, who cries when she feeds him because she's remembering her own, who makes terrible fusion tacos and laughs at my jokes even when they're not funny. His thumb stroked her cheekbone. Who's brave enough to be honest about her fears instead of pretending they don't exist? What do you see when you look at yourself? She whispered. A man who's falling for someone he has no right to fall for. His forehead touched hers. A man who's terrified of losing another person. He stopped, swallowed hard. A man who wants you to stay. Not for 2 weeks. Stay. Tara, not as an employee. As family. As... His voice dropped to barely audible. As mine. Every logical part of her brain screamed warnings. But her heart, her traitorous, broken heart that had been dormant for months, was suddenly pounding with want. Kiss me, she breathed. He did. And it was nothing like she'd imagined. There was no hesitation, no tentativeness. Tara kissed her like a man who'd been holding back for 9 days and had finally been given permission to let go. His mouth was hungry and reverent all at once. One hand fisting in her hair while the other pulled her flush against him. Bianca melted into it, her hands sliding up his chest to curl around his neck. He tasted like the wine they'd had with dinner and something uniquely him, power and desperation and longing. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tara rested his forehead against hers again. In Korean tradition, he said roughly, courtship is slow, respectful. Families are involved, there are stages. In Black American tradition, Bianca countered, you don't let love pass you by just because it doesn't follow a rule book. Love, he repeated, like testing the weight of the word. Getting there, she admitted. Terrifyingly fast. They made love that night in his bedroom, with the ocean providing a soundtrack through open windows. Tara was reverent and passionate, whispering Korean endearments she didn't understand but felt in her bones. Bianca gave herself over to it completely. To him, to this impossible thing they were building. Afterward, tangled in sheets that probably cost more than her monthly rent, Tara traced patterns on her bare shoulder. Stay, he said again. Past 2 weeks, past whatever timeline we set. Just stay. Yes, Bianca heard herself say. Yes. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, peaceful for the first time in months. The death threat was discovered at dawn by Min Jun during his perimeter check. White paper, careful calligraphy in both Korean and English, secured to the compound gate with a knife. Below it, in blocky English letters, Black whore corrupting Yang bloodline. Min Jun brought it directly to Tara, who'd just left Bianca sleeping in his bed. One look at the paper and every soft edge from the night before vanished, replaced by the cold, lethal dragon the world feared. Double security, he ordered. Nobody in or out without my explicit approval. And find out who left this. Yongwang, Min Jun said carefully. Perhaps it's time to reconsider. No, Tara's voice could have frozen fire. She stays. Eric needs her. He stopped himself. She stays. End of discussion. But as he looked at that threat, at the hatred bleeding through each carefully formed character, Tara felt ice crystallize in his chest. Someone wanted Bianca gone, and in his world, want often led to action. The syndicate council meeting was supposed to be routine quarterly reports, territory discussions, the usual posturing among underbosses. But Sung Min had spent 2 weeks poisoning wells, and Tara could feel the shift in power the moment he entered the private room at one of his legitimate restaurants. 7 men sat around the table, all Korean, all over 50, all wearing expressions that ranged from concern to barely concealed contempt. Sung Min sat at the far end, his smile sharp as a blade. Yongwang, Park Ji-hoon began, the eldest underboss choosing his words carefully. There are concerns about your judgment, your personal situation. My personal situation has nothing to do with business operations, Tara said coldly, taking his seat at the head of the table. 3 of our restaurants have been hit this week, another underboss interjected. The gambling operation in Koreatown was raided. Our shipping contracts are being challenged. He leaned forward. This started when you brought that woman into your home. Her name is Bianca Griffin. Tara's voice dropped to something dangerous. And she saved my son's life. At what cost? Sung Min finally spoke. The Chinese triad contacted me directly. They see your attachment to her as weakness. They're preparing to move on our territory unless you, how did they put it? Correct your mistake. Tara's hands clenched beneath the table. The triad can try. They'll fail. Will they? Park's expression was grave. Or will you be too distracted protecting your black mistress to see the knife coming? The slur hung in the air like poison gas. Tara stood slowly, his chair scraping against hardwood. Bianca Griffin is under my complete protection. She is Eric's milk mother, which by our oldest traditions, makes her sacred to this family. Any man who disrespects her disrespects me. And I promise you, his gaze swept the table. That's a mistake you'll only make once. Two underbosses stood and walked out without a word. The others shifted uncomfortably. Only Sung-min looked pleased. You see? His uncle said softly. You're tearing this family apart. For what? For some woman you've known 2 weeks? Before Tara could respond, the door opened. Bianca stood there with Eric in her arms, the baby fussing and rooting against her chest. She froze when she saw the room full of hard-faced Korean men, but squared her shoulders. I'm sorry, she said quietly. He needs to eat. I didn't know you were. Come in. Tara's voice gentled immediately. It's fine. What happened next was something none of them expected. As Bianca walked to a chair in the corner, settling Eric to nurse with practiced modesty, 3 of the underbosses stood and bowed. Small bows, barely perceptible, but acknowledgement nonetheless. Recognition of the milk mother's sacred role. The other 2 looked disgusted. Sung-min's face went purple with rage. You bring her here? He hissed. Into our council? You parade your shame in front of— Get out, Tara said quietly. Uncle. Get out of my restaurant. Get out of my sight. Before I forget your family. Sung-min left, but his parting words echoed like a prophecy. This isn't over, nephew. Not even close. That night, Bianca woke to the sound of gunfire. She bolted upright in Tara's bed. She'd been sleeping there for 3 nights now, but he was already moving, pulling on pants, grabbing a gun from the nightstand safe. Stay here, he commanded. Eric. Minjun's getting him. There's a safe room, underground. Go. Minjun appeared in the doorway, Eric wailing in his arms, just as more shots cracked through the night air. They ran Bianca barefoot in one of Tara's t-shirts, Minjun limping from an old injury, Eric screaming in terror downstairs and through a hidden door in the wine cellar. The safe room was steel-reinforced concrete, stocked with supplies for weeks. Bianca took Eric, trying to calm him while her heart hammered against her ribs. Above them, she could hear muffled sounds of combat gunfire, shouting. The chaos of violence she'd only ever seen in movies. Who? She asked Minjun, who was checking weapons with efficient calm. Unknown. Could be Triad. Could be our own people. His eyes met hers. The old guard will never accept you, Miss Griffin. I warned him. He wouldn't listen. Because of me. Bianca whispered, realization crushing her chest. This is happening because of me. No. Minjun's voice was surprisingly gentle. This is happening because young Tara chose love over tradition. Some men will respect that choice. Others will kill for it. 2 hours later, when Tara finally came down, blood on his knuckles, murder in his eyes, Bianca was still trembling. He pulled her and Eric into his arms without a word, his face buried in her hair. 3 dead, he said finally. Ours. The attackers got away. Tara, I know what you're going to say. He pulled back to look at her. That you should leave. That your presence is causing this. But Bianca, if you leave now, it tells every rival family that I can be pressured, that I'm weak. It makes everything worse. So I'm trapped, she said numbly. I stay and people die. I leave and it's worse. You stay, Tara said fiercely. And I protect you. Both of you. With everything I have. But in the darkness of the safe room, with the scent of gunpowder still lingering in the air, Bianca wondered if love was supposed to smell like blood and taste like fear, and whether any amount of protection could stop what was coming. Now if you think you know where this is heading, I promise you, you don't. The war that's about to unfold will push Bianca and Tara to their absolute breaking point. If you're still not subscribed, hit that button now, because the next chapter of their story will leave you breathless. The pediatrician appointment was supposed to be routine, Eric's 2-week checkup, weight and measurements, confirmation that he was thriving under Bianca's care. Minjun drove them in an armored SUV, 2 additional security vehicles flanking them through LA traffic. This is excessive, Bianca said, watching armed men position themselves around the medical building's entrance. This is necessary, Minjun corrected. After last night, we take no chances. The appointment went well. Eric had gained nearly 2 pounds. His color was perfect, his development on track. The pediatrician praised Bianca's care with the kind of relief that said she'd been worried about more than just the baby's health. They were 3 blocks from the compound when the explosion ripped through the intersection ahead. Minjun cursed in Korean, already reversing. But a second vehicle, a black van, slammed into their side. The SUV spun, glass shattering, and Bianca threw herself over Eric, shielding him with her body. Men in masks poured from the van. Minjun was firing through the broken window, his face set in lethal concentration. But there were too many. Bianca saw the moment the bullet caught him, his body jerking, blood blooming across his shoulder. "Run!" he shouted at her in English. But hands were already reaching through the shattered door, grabbing her, ripping Eric from her arms, then shoving them both into the van. The last thing she saw was Minjun's body crumpling onto asphalt, his blood spreading like accusation. The warehouse in Koreatown smelled of fish and machine oil. They'd bound Bianca's wrists but left Eric in her arms. He was screaming again, hungry and terrified. She tried to soothe him, her voice shaking, her mind racing through survival scenarios. The man who entered wore an expensive suit and a smile that made her skin crawl. He was Chinese, maybe 60, with dead eyes and the casual authority of someone accustomed to violence. "Miss Griffin," he said in perfect English. "I am Zhou Wei, of the Triad. You are a very valuable woman. Let us go," Bianca said, hating how her voice trembled. "Whatever you want. Kidnapping a baby isn't going to Oh, but it will." Zhou pulled up a chair, sitting far too close. "Young Tara will give me everything I ask for. Territory, businesses, connections, all for his son. And for you." His smile widened. "Especially for you. He'll kill you, perhaps. But first, he'll bankrupt himself trying to save you." And that's when the door opened, and Bianca's blood froze. Uncle Sung-min walked in like he owned the place, exchanging casual greetings with Zhou in Korean before his eyes found Bianca. The hatred there was so pure it was almost physical. "You," she breathed. "You did this. I'm correcting my nephew's mistake," Sung-min said calmly, switching to English. "He shamed our family by bringing you into our home. By elevating a black woman to a position of honor she has no right to hold." He turned to Zhou. "When Tara comes for her, and he will, you'll kill them both. The woman and the baby. Make it look like they died in the firefight." Zhou's expression flickered with uncertainty. "The child is Yang's heir. The child is contaminated," Sung-min spat. "Fed by foreign milk. Touched by impure hands. Better he dies now than grow up to pollute our bloodline further." "You're insane," Bianca whispered. But her mind was already working. She'd heard enough Korean over 2 weeks to understand more than they realized. And she'd learned about Korean traditions, including the ones about milk mothers being sacred. "Zhou Wei," she said clearly, making the Chinese boss turn to face her. "In Korean tradition, the woman who nurses an heir becomes protected by ancient law. Killing me doesn't just break Yang's power, it breaks the old codes. The codes that govern all the families." Something shifted in Zhou's expression. Calculation. Doubt. "She's lying," Sung-min said quickly. "There's no such—" "I know of this tradition," Zhou interrupted. "My grandfather spoke of it. Of milk kinship bonds that transcended blood." He studied Bianca with new interest. "If what she says is true, killing her brings shame not just to Yang but to all who participate." "She's manipulating you." Sung-min's composure cracked. "She's a nothing. A waitress. A black whore who saved an infant's life?" Zhou finished softly. "Her own sustenance." He stood. "This was supposed to be business. Clean. Leveraging Yang's weakness to expand our territory. You said nothing about murdering a milk mother, about breaking sacred bonds. There are no sacred bonds with her." Sung-min was shouting now. "She's not Korean. She's human," Bianca said quietly, rocking Eric, whose cries had subsided to whimpers. "I'm human. His son is human. And you're willing to murder us both, because you're so afraid of change that you'd destroy your own family to prevent it." Zhou's men were exchanging looks now. Bianca could see doubt spreading like infection. She pressed her advantage. "Tara will come for us. We both know that. But Zhou Wei, what kind of man do you want to be when he does? A businessman making a calculated move? Or a child killer who broke ancient codes for a bitter old man's racism? The warehouse erupted into chaos as Zhou's phone rang, one of his lieutenants shouting in Mandarin about Yang forces mobilizing, about a full-scale assault coming. And in the confusion, as Sungmin and Zhou began arguing in mixed Korean and Chinese, Bianca held Eric close and prayed that Tara would arrive before her gambit fell apart. Because she'd just made herself valuable as a symbol, now she had to survive long enough for that symbol to matter. Tara arrived at the warehouse 2 hours later, and Bianca watched through security monitors as he stepped from his vehicle alone. Hands raised, no visible weapons. Behind him, 4 black SUVs waited, but his men stayed inside, a show of compliance that made her chest ache with understanding. He was surrendering everything. For them, Zhou's lieutenant had tied her to a chair near the monitors, keeping her visible but contained. Eric slept fitfully in a makeshift bassinet fashioned from a cardboard box. Exhausted from crying, Bianca's wrists were raw from zip ties. But her mind was sharp, cataloging every detail, every potential advantage. Young Tara, Zhou greeted him in the warehouse's main floor below. Prompt as always, I have what you asked for. Tara's voice carried through speakers, rough with exhaustion. Territory maps, business contracts, banking access codes, everything you demanded. He dropped a briefcase at Zhou's feet, and 5 million in cash. Take it. Let them go. Sungmin emerged from the shadows, his smile victorious. Look at the mighty Yong Wang, brought to his knees by a black whore and a crying baby. Tara's entire body went rigid. Samshon, you did this. I saved this family, Sungmin corrected. You were weak, distracted, ready to throw away 5 generations of Yang legacy for some woman you've known 2 weeks. He moved closer, voice dripping contempt. Your father would be ashamed. Your grandfather would disown you. My grandfather, Tara said quietly, dangerously, taught me that honor means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. That strength is measured by what you're willing to sacrifice for family. His eyes blazed. Bianca Griffin is family, Eric's milk mother. By every tradition you claim to uphold, she's sacred. She's black. Sungmin spat the word like poison. She contaminates everything she touches. Her milk pollutes our bloodline. Her presence shames us before every family from here to Seoul. He turned to Zhou. Kill them both. Now, while he watches. Let him see what his weakness costs. Zhou hesitated, looking between the 2 Yang men. This was supposed to be business. Bianca's hands found the security panel beside her chair. The guard watching her had stepped away, distracted by the confrontation below. She stretched her bound wrists, fingers brushing buttons until her voice crackled through the warehouse PA system. Zhou Wei. Sungmin didn't tell you everything. Every head snapped toward the speakers. Tara's eyes found the camera, his expression transforming from despair to fierce hope. Sungmin doesn't want territory or money, Bianca continued, her voice steady despite her racing heart. He wants Tara dead, wants Eric dead, wants to take over the Yang Syndicate with you as his puppet. He planned to have you kill us, blame you for breaking Milk Mother codes, then use the scandal to position himself as the righteous successor. She's lying, Sungmin shouted, but Zhou's expression had gone cold. The codes, Zhou said softly. You told me they didn't matter, that she wasn't really protected. She's not, she's human. Tara interrupted, his voice carrying steel. She's human, and she saved my son when no one else could. When my own family, he looked at Sungmin with utter contempt, would have let him starve, rather than accept help from someone they deemed unworthy. The warehouse door exploded inward. Tara's men poured through in tactical formation, but they weren't alone. Other Korean men Bianca didn't recognize followed, older, authoritative, clearly from other families. The Syndicate Council, Park Ji-hoon, stepped forward, his weathered face grave. We received Miss Griffin's message, her explanation of events. He looked at Sungmin with disgust. You violated every code we hold sacred. Endangered a milk mother. Conspired with rivals against your own blood. Sungmin's face went purple. You're choosing her over tradition? We're choosing honor, another elder said. Something you've forgotten. Sungmin pulled a gun, and everything happened in slow motion. Tara moved, fast as lightning, tackling his uncle. They crashed into shipping containers. Fists flying, years of resentment and cultural warfare erupting into brutal violence. Bianca screamed as Tara's men freed her, as she scooped up Eric. As the warehouse devolved into controlled chaos, Joe's people backing away, the syndicate elders watching with grim faces. Tara got the upper hand, slamming Sungmin against concrete. Gun appearing in his hand, pressing against his uncle's temple. His face was a mask of rage and grief. His finger white on the trigger. Tara! Bianca's voice cut through the red haze. She ran forward, Eric crying in her arms. Tara! Stop! He looked at her, chest heaving, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. Your son needs a father, she said, voice breaking. Not an executioner. Not a man consumed by vengeance. She moved closer, until she could touch his arm. I need the man I fell in love with. Not the dragon everyone fears. Not the killer. The man who makes fusion tacos and teaches me Korean and holds his baby like he's made of glass. Tara's hand trembled. Sungmin's eyes held vicious triumph, probably expecting mercy to be his nephew's final weakness. Please, Bianca whispered. Choose us. Choose the future over the past. Tara's finger eased off the trigger. He stood, pulling Sungmin up with him, then shoved him toward the syndicate elders. He's yours, Tara said hoarsely. Judge him by your laws. I'm done. He crossed to Bianca in 3 strides, pulling her and Eric into his arms, his face buried in her hair. She felt him shaking. Felt the moment the dragon's armor finally cracked completely. I choose you, he whispered. Both of you. Over everything. The Syndicate Council convened in the same restaurant where Bianca had first appeared during a meeting. But this time, she sat beside Tara at the head of the table, Eric sleeping in her arms, a living symbol of everything that had changed. Sungmin's sentence was swift. Exile. Stripped of position, money, protection. He would leave California and never return on pain of death. As he was led out, his eyes found Bianca one last time, blazing with impotent hatred. He'll try again, Park warned Tara. From exile, he'll plot. No. Tara stood, his hand finding Bianca's shoulder. He won't. Because I'm stepping down. The room erupted. Voices overlapping in Korean and English, shock and outrage mixing with something that might have been relief. I'm walking away from this life, Tara continued, his voice cutting through chaos. My cousin Jae-sung will take over the Yang Syndicate. He's younger, progressive, educated in America. He'll bridge old and new better than I ever could. He looked down at Eric. I'm choosing my family. The one I've built with Bianca. Over territory, over power, over everything this world demands. Jae-sung stood, a man in his late 20s with Tara's sharp features but softer eyes. I accept the position. If the council agrees, the vote was closer than Bianca expected, 4 in favor, 3 against. But it was enough. You'll have no protection, one of the opposition warned Tara. No resources. No, I'll have everything that matters, Tara interrupted, his hand tightening on Bianca's shoulder. Later, at the hospital where Minjun was recovering, bullet removed. Prognosis good. Tara sat beside his head of security's bed with visible emotion. You taught me loyalty, Tara said in Korean, then switched to English for Bianca's benefit. Taught me that honor isn't about tradition. It's about keeping your word. He paused. I'm sorry I put you in danger. Sorry I... Yongwang. Minjun interrupted, then corrected himself with a slight smile. Tara, you taught me something too. That love is worth fighting for, even when everything says you shouldn't. His eyes moved to Bianca. Protect her. And that boy. They're your kingdom now. The cemetery visit was Bianca's idea. Jiwoo's grave was simple, elegant, marked with Korean and English inscriptions. Tara knelt, speaking softly in Korean, and Bianca hung back, giving him privacy. When he finished, he gestured for her to join him. I'm telling her about you, he said. About how you saved Eric. How you saved me. His voice roughened, asking her blessing. For us. Bianca knelt beside him, placing her hand on the gravestone. I'll love him, she promised the woman she'd never met. And your son. I'll honor your memory by giving them the family you would have wanted. A wind rustled through the trees, and Tara pulled Bianca close, both of them crying, both of them healing. Portland greeted them with rain and possibility. The house was modest compared to the Malibu compound, a craftsman bungalow with a view of the city, purchased under Bianca's name for safety. Tara had liquidated personal assets, set up trusts, ensured they'd be comfortable but not conspicuous. Bianca's mother, Carol, arrived 2 days after they'd settled in. She took one look at Tara, this tattooed Korean man holding a baby with obvious love, and her skepticism melted. You the one who's been protecting my daughter? Carol asked. Trying to, Tara said. She's better at protecting me. Good answer. Carol's smile was warm. Now let me hold that grandbaby. 6 months passed in a blur of normal. Tara took online courses in business administration. Bianca returned to nursing school part-time. Eric thrived, growing chubby and happy, his laughter the soundtrack of their small house. And slowly, the fear faded. The hypervigilance eased. They became just a family. Beautifully, impossibly normal. The wedding was small but perfect, a fusion of cultures that would have scandalized the old guard and delighted everyone present. They held it in a Portland botanical garden, cherry blossoms providing natural beauty that needed no enhancement. Bianca wore a hanbok, a traditional Korean dress in deep crimson that Tara's cousin Jae-sung had sent from LA. But she'd modified it, incorporating her grandmother's wedding lace at the collar, a physical manifestation of two worlds merging. Tara wore a modern suit but had commissioned a traditional Korean groom's hat for the paebak ceremony, where they bowed to elders and received blessings. Carol cried through the whole thing, clutching Eric, now 10 months old, and babbling cheerfully, while Bianca's aunts provided a gospel choir soundtrack that made several Korean guests weep. The reception was held in a rented hall decorated with Korean lanterns and African textiles. The buffet was gloriously chaotic. Kimchi and collard greens, bulgogi and fried chicken, japchae and mac and cheese, cultural fusion in every dish. Your grandmother would love this, Carol told Bianca, watching Korean and Black American guests mixing, laughing, sharing food. She always said love transcends borders. Jae-sung had flown in from LA with a small contingent young syndicate members who represented the new generation. They bowed respectfully to Tara, called Bianca Hyung Soo-nim, sister-in-law, with genuine warmth. The transition has been smooth, Jae-sung reported quietly. Your uncle is in Hong Kong. Quiet, bitter, but not a threat. And the families respect your choice. Some admire it. Others think you're insane. Jae-sung grinned. Either way, you're free. The surprise came during toasts. An elderly Korean man entered, flanked by younger bodyguards, his presence commanding instant attention. Park Ji-hoon, eldest of the syndicate council, approached the head table with formal dignity. Yang Tara, he said in Korean, then switched to English. Miss Griffin, I bring official decree from the Council of Families. He produced a document, formal, stamped, bearing multiple signatures. Tara scanned it, his expression transforming to shock. Full release from all obligations, Park announced. Unprecedented for a former Yongwang, but earned. He turned to Bianca. Your milk mother earned your freedom through her courage. She showed us that honor lies in protecting family, whatever form it takes. That strength comes from love, not tradition. Bianca felt tears streaming down her face as Park actually bowed to her. You changed us, he said simply. Thank you. If you made it this far with me, you're not just watching a video, you're part of something. This community shows up for stories like this, for love like this. Drop a comment and tell me which moment hit you the hardest. Subscribe if you haven't, and stay with me now, because I want to show you exactly how their story ends. After the elder left, after dancing and laughter, and Eric falling asleep on his grandfather Carol's shoulder, Bianca pulled Tara aside. I have something to tell you, she said, her hand moving to her stomach. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Bianca, a girl, she whispered. I want to name her Jiwoo Elijah Yang Griffin. Honor both our losses, both our cultures. Tara's answer was to kiss her, long and deep and full of promise, while their wedding guests cheered. 3 months later, in their Portland home with rain drumming on the roof, Bianca stood at the kitchen window watching Tara teach Eric to walk in the backyard. The toddler wobbled on unsteady legs, calling out, "Appa," Daddy when he stumbled, laughing when Tara caught him. Her hand rested on her growing belly, feeling their daughter move. On the counter, kimchi fermented beside a pot of collard greens. 2 cultures. 1 kitchen. Infinite love. She'd reached across a restaurant table to comfort a stranger's child, Bianca thought, and found the most dangerous man in the Korean underworld. Found grief that matched her own. Found courage she didn't know she possessed. Somehow, impossibly, miraculously, she'd found her home, not in a place, but in a person. In a man who'd given up an empire for love. In a baby who'd needed her as desperately as she'd needed him. In a family built not on blood or tradition, but on choice. On mercy. On the radical act of loving across every boundary society constructed. Eric's laughter drifted through the open window, joined by Tara's deeper chuckle. And Bianca Griffin Yang smiled, tears of joy sliding down her cheeks, her hand cradling the life growing inside her. She was a mother again. A wife. A woman who'd walked through fire and found family on the other side. Cultural barriers broken. Love triumphant. Future unlimited. Umma, Eric called, spotting her in the window. Mama. The Korean word that meant she belonged. Coming, baby, she called back, stepping into the rain. Into Tara's waiting arms. Into the beautiful, chaotic, perfect life they'd built together. Into home.